Over the past few years, generative AI tools have been rapidly integrated into university and business school curricula. Many educators operate under the assumption that these tools act as a democratizing force, naturally raising the baseline of student performance across the board. The expectation is straightforward. While low-performing students receive the largest benefit, high-performing students should also see a measurable lift in the quality of their work. This chart illustrates the theoretical assumption. Two parallel trend lines move upward, suggesting access to AI provides a proportional academic lift regardless of starting capability. To test this, researchers evaluated students during a high-pressure, ill-defined business school exam with a strict time limit. They measured exactly how access to ChatGPT-4 altered the final scores of both high and low-performing cohorts under these rigorous constraints. The results show that when applied to complex, time-constrained academic tasks, the promised democratizing effect of generative AI fails to manifest. Instead of democratizing performance, the researchers observed a strict equalizing effect. For the low-performing cohort, the AI functioned as hypothesized. It provided necessary structural scaffolding, and those students saw their exam scores rise. However, the data revealed a counter-finding for the top cohort. Granting high-performing students access to generative AI actively caused their exam scores to decline. Charting the actual empirical data reveals a different story. The low performer scores rise, but the high performer scores drop, forcing both trend lines to converge in the middle. This convergence isn't shared excellence. It is a trap masking actual student capability. Because the technology pulls top students down while pushing lower students up, disparate underlying skill levels produce nearly identical scores. This convergence makes it impossible to distinguish between a student who has mastered the domain and one who is relying on the tool's output. Granting access to generative AI without specific pedagogical training penalizes top students and compromises the validity of traditional academic evaluations. To understand why top students fail, we must look past exam scores and examine the microcognitive processes inside a student's working memory. The study identifies the driver of this failure as GenAI-induced cognitive load inversion. A low-performing student typically struggles with intrinsic cognitive load. They lack the domain vocabulary and basic structural organization required to answer the prompt. The AI relieves this burden. It acts as a cognitive scaffold, taking scattered concepts and snapping them into a basic, organized grid. Lacking expertise to critique the output, these novices adopt a duplication approach. They copy the AI's provided structure and submit it, bypassing rigorous evaluation. High-performing students encounter a different cognitive reality. They enter the exam with highly developed iterative analytical workflows already established in their minds. For them, the AI acts as a disruptor. It generates massive volumes of plausible-sounding text, which immediately scatters the expert's established mental structure and creates high extraneous cognitive load. Under strict time constraints, the expert feels compelled to read, evaluate, and integrate all of this new information. This overload depletes their working memory, forcing them to abandon their own rigorous analytical skills. Overwhelmed by the sheer volume of text, the expert reverts to the exact same duplication strategy as the novice. The reason this output is so voluminous and cognitively taxing to evaluate comes down to the architecture of the AI models themselves. A foundational 2021 paper co-authored by researcher Timnit Gebru defined the severe architectural limitations of large language models. The authors introduced the term stochastic parrot. Generative AI probabilistically stitches together linguistic forms it has observed in massive training datasets, but it does so without any actual reference to meaning or truth. This creates a dangerous illusion. The generated text sounds highly fluent, authoritative, and pre-organized. That fluency compels the student to read and process every word. Because the text is unanchored and probabilistic, verifying its accuracy requires constant, heavy metacognitive regulation from the user. Returning to the exam scenario, applying that level of rigorous oversight is impossible to sustain under a ticking clock. Generative AI operates as a high-volume statistical guesser. It fragments human attention and penalizes those who attempt to thoroughly verify its claims. The solution to this crisis is not banning the technology. Educators must shift their pedagogy from simply granting AI access to actively teaching AI literacy. We can build a philosophical and practical defense against this cognitive overload using Douglas Hofstadter's 1979 work on formal systems. Hofstadter explores Gödel's incompleteness theorem, which proves that any sufficiently complex system contains truths that it cannot verify using only its own internal rules. We apply this to the classroom through the GEB framework for AI literacy. The base foundation dictates students must understand AI tools have fundamental limits and cannot verify their own outputs. Pillar 1 focuses on teaching metacognition to recognize the strange loop. In an educational context, the strange loop is when a user realizes the AI is trapped in a circular probabilistic cycle lacking genuine logic. Teaching students to recognize this loop is the crucial first step in preventing cognitive overload, stopping them from treating AI as an infallible answer engine. Once a student recognizes the structural limits of the AI, they have to be taught how to actively anchor its probabilistic outputs to reality. This requirement is outlined in Pillar 2 of the framework, grounding and isomorphism. Isomorphism is the academic requirement to map the abstract claims generated by an AI directly to verifiable real-world data. Educators enforce this by designing authentic in-class projects. Student-generated data serves as the verifiable anchor against which all AI outputs are tested. The final cognitive defense mechanism is found in Pillar 3 on the right side of the chart. This pillar focuses on jumping out of the system. Students must be explicitly taught to step outside the immediate prompt response chat window to evaluate the AI's training data for inherent biases, logical gaps, and hidden prejudices. This intentional metacognitive distancing is the exact psychological defense mechanism required to manage the extraneous load that otherwise hinders high-performing students during an exam. By embedding the GEB framework into higher education, faculty can successfully transition students from passive, overwhelmed duplicators of stochastic parrots into active, discerning orchestrators of artificial intelligence.